So the first story, so a man called Jeffrey Hinton, he's basically known as the godfather of AI, basically helped to, I don't know, sounds so gangster, innit? Even often
Nerd.
refuse. So he's the godfather of AI, and basically he was really important in terms of developing neural networks, which is what ChatGPT and a lot of these kind of generative AI tools are kind of based on.
Yeah.
He left Google amicably, been there for a long time, stellar performer, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And has now decided to do a complete 180 after spending all that time cashing out at Google, making a whole bunch of money. Now he's like, I'm really worried about AI.
Oh, is he
And
now?
he's now saying that he fears that this could run away from human beings, and we're not prepared for a society where there are things that are smarter than us.
Oh, is
and
it?
And they could be really misused by bad actors.
Wow.
Now, we wrote an article on Pocket basically saying that actually this is not the first time someone said this before, right? So Timothy Gebru, who was an AI ethicist at Google, black woman of Eritrean heritage, shout out to my sister, she basically had warned that this is getting out of control and was reprimanded essentially, and faced backlash and wasn't given kind of the green light to kind of go ahead and express her thoughts and concerns, and eventually basically was fired.
Yeah.
What's going on
Sad
here?
day in tech.
Yeah, sad day in tech. What's going on here? Like, do you think this guy basically probably he himself would have got fired if he had spoke up within Google, or do you think it's a thing of it's got to come from the right kind of person, basically?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Lay into them. What do you think's happening?
What is happening right now in the industry is whitewashing of AI ethics.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. I, for one, am really scared about this, because the first people to speak about the dangers of tech as it was developing and the lack of ethics were underrepresented people, black people. Like when the first Apple Watch launched, it couldn't really work properly on dark skin. There are still hand dryers in China right now that can't even recognize black hands when they go under them to dry hands. So, you know, in the black community, we have been saying like, we need to have more representation in the room and we need to approach this development with caution. And I think like Timnit Gebru was one of the first people that, you know, really brought to light some of the dangers I wasn't even aware of. And then there's the amazing work of like the Algorithmic Justice League as well with like Joy Bolamuni. And it's really frustrating and really upsetting that when thought leaders from our communities step forward with the facts, with the research, and lay out the case, these companies shut them down.
Right.
Like they don't respect their authority and they don't respect their power. But the minute someone from the dominant group speaks up and literally delivers the same message, they're grabbing headlines in the New York
Times front page. It's crazy, isn't it? Right.
And I think the messed up thing about Timnit Gebru is she was fired from Google, which meant that she didn't get any compensation. She wouldn't have let her stocks materialize. Like she would just been kicked out the door with nothing.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, we don't know that, but potentially, yeah.
Potentially, yeah. Meanwhile, someone else, you know, leaves on their own terms,
Right.
tells the world the same story, and is heralded a champion, a hero.
Yeah, it doesn't make no sense. And I think what you're saying about underrepresented people, like we feel the brunt of these technologies more.
Yes.
Primarily because obviously the lack of training data on black people, on dark skinned individuals, these technologies end up basically not working with us well. So even like facial recognition technology, if you're black, you're more likely basically to be misidentified, and also you're more likely to basically have racial recognition technology be used on you because you happen to live in areas that are disproportionately more have higher surveillance.
Yeah.
So the repercussions are crazy. And we had an article on Pocket actually where a dude was arrested and charged with a crime. 100% wasn't him.
Wow.
And it was based on facial recognition technology.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that a lot of the prominent voices in this space tend to be, black and black women.
Yeah, it's really worrying actually, because AI is trained on existing data sets, right? So if we wanted to ask a computer, right, to make a parole system more efficient.
Yeah.
Hey, AI, who should go up for parole? Well, the AI is going to look at who historically has been granted parole by judges.
Yeah.
Let's look at data in the US.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
if you're going up for parole against a judge, you're likely going to be facing a white judge.
Yeah.
And research shows that because of affinity bias, white judges are more likely to grant parole to white criminals than to black criminals. So AI is going to look at the existing data and go, black criminals don't get parole, but white criminals do.
Right.
So my decision is grant all the white criminals parole
Yeah.
and don't give it to any of the black ones. It's not going to necessarily look at the facts of every case because it's also trying to act based on a trend.
And then also, even if you say to it like rule out race, it will still look at other characteristics. So let's say it might not realize that this is a predominantly black area. So it might say people based in this part of New York tend to not get parole. Therefore, I'm going to factor that into my decision making process. Yeah, it's messed up.
What about autonomous vehicles?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because, if AI ethics is a field that's being underfunded, and we know that that's happening. Elon Musk took over Twitter. One of the first departments he laid off was the ethics department. Really really big risks in like the development of autonomous vehicles, for example, are in trouble. So Elon Musk also is the CEO of Tesla. Now, a study by Georgia State University, and this study must be from at least 2019, there's probably new data out, found that autonomous vehicles could not recognize dark-skinned people on the road. So if there was a pedestrian crossing in test scenarios, they would stop for white people, not stop for black people. I ain't walking on the street where I'm getting run over.
Yeah. You know what? The one thing about autonomous vehicles that doesn't worry me, Elon's been bullshitting for like 20 years. It's around the corner, guys. I remember you telling me that you didn't want to learn to drive because you were like, autonomous vehicles. If you go back to the old Techish archives, you were like, I'm not learning to drive.
I'm waiting for my
car's
robot
driving me. Yeah. It's not coming. He's been saying that for 10 years. Even 10 years ago, he was like, we're going to be in Mars in the year 2020. Bro, like, what's happening? You know what I'm saying? So don't worry. Don't lose too much sleep about it, about getting run over by a car that can't tell you the difference between you and thing. But in principle, it's worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Let's think. You know what the thing about AI actually? I was listening to Sundar, the CEO of Google, do like his fake version of the Apple thing. That's funny actually, isn't it? Because no companies used to do that until Steve Jobs kind of came in there and revolutionized. So now every company's got to do a presentation. Like, I don't need to care. I don't need to know about Google Sheets has changed. It's font. We need to have it doesn't have the same feel for a software company as well. They're like, look at Google Maps. Look at what we can do now. I'm like, okay. Anyway, this could have just been like a Notion like page. You could send it to us. But he used the word AI like an astonishing amount of times.
Really?
Like a million amount of times.
Buzzword of the day, bro.
They got caught slipping
Hustle
though.
Crew AI.
They got caught slipping, Apple, Google, I think. Yeah, I think they did. In the sense that like, I think people compared the previous events they had done 2 years ago and there was hardly any mention of the word AI.
Yeah.
And now they realize they're essentially in a kind of arms race with Microsoft and OpenAI. And how is it that a company of that scale, of that success, with that many so-called smart people were just blindsided, where they were just rich off the hog, and they just thought, you know what, we got an unassailable position. Search is where it's at. Because I use search a lot less. I'll be honest with you. Like I use ChatGPT a lot more. And I think a UK fund manager came out and said that Google is no longer an automatic buy just because it's an uncertain future with things like ChatGPT. What's your thoughts on Google making this pivot now, going all in on generative AI? So just to actually clarify, they're now rolling it out on Google Docs. They're now rolling it out on Gmail. So
like 2 months after Notion?
I know, right? but much more people use Google Docs, and much more people use Gmail. So now you can, within your Gmail,
get on Notion. No.
You can, I know. But within your Gmail though, now you can be like, yo, like just write me this email, reply back to this email.
Right. Yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of AI startups that were Chrome plugins that were doing that. They've all been wiped off the map basically right now. Yeah. So 2-part question: do you think this will work? B, and a 3-part. Do you think this will work? Too little, too late, and why did it take them so long?
Can Google now dominate the AI market, especially as far as generative AI, consumer use case as well as business use case? I mean, first mover advantage is an advantage for a reason, right? And I think ChatGPT, I mean, there's a South Park episode about ChatGPT. Like, it's the coinage of the word. And I just don't really see that product name going away. And also, it's been integrated into so many things already. I mean, look, at the end of the day, people are also lazy. They're going to go for the most frictionless thing. We're probably early adopters on generative AI because we're entrepreneurs and we see the applications, the ways to like improve.
Too much time on Twitter as well.
100%. Too much time on Twitter. And we have no lives. So I think as a play, it's too soon to tell. Like, let's just wait and see. Like, let's just wait and see on how it is adopted through the Google Suite and businesses that use the Google Suite. Can they win this game? It's hard to say. I don't know. I do think Sam Altman is a very impressive person. Like,
yeah, he's smart.
I remember when Sam Altman came to London in 2018, an email just went out from Y Combinator or something like, oh, Sam Altman's going to be speaking at like the Royal Institute.
Did you go?
I went, yeah, because...
Oh, that's your boy, yeah?
That's your boy. Sam Altman. Because,
you got a picture?
You know, for people like us, how to start a startup is iconic, right?
Yes,
like that YouTube series.
A lot of great free education on that.
Generation of founders that came up, especially in the 2010s.
Yes.
That was our MBA. That was our school, right? Yeah. So when I got this email, like Sam Altman's going to be in London, I was like, of course I'm going to go.
No-brainer.
I went super early because I thought there was going to be like, it was first come, first serve. I thought there was going to be a long line out of the building. In fact, the theater wasn't even full.
So you had we
had this intimate conversation with Sam Altman. He talked about the ecosystem. He talked about the future, but he also talked about the role that technology had in genuinely improving the lives of people all across the world. And at that time, I think he was more focused on like health and like YC and general stuff like that. But I think there's a certain like like romance to like a startup coming up, dominating AI, taking on big tech. And they might be able to use a bit of that like underdog to win this race against Google. Final point. Why did it take Google so long to get into the generative AI game when in theory with their Office tools, it would have made so much sense for them to do it? I feel like this brings us back to the meta conversation where